twins were still asleep. For once. Ada lay with her tiny fist against her cheek, a pose that mirrored her mother's calm. Peaceful, unaware of how unkind the world could be. Toby curled up like a little cat, his breath soft and whistling, the sound he only made when he felt safe. But then, he noticed. Her side of the bed was empty. At first, he brushed it off. Maybe she had stepped outside to fetch water. Maybe she was already in the kitchen making pap. Maybe she just needed a moment, some air. But the silence didn't budge. It stretched, heavy and suspicious, wrapping around his thoughts like a cold fog. He called out once, "Rose?" No answer. He tried again, louder this time. "Rose, where are you?" Still nothing. And then he saw it. A piece of white paper, folded neatly, sitting alone on the wooden table by the window. The morning dew had slipped through the cracked glass and curled its edges ever so slightly. He walked toward it, slowly, each step heavier than the last, as if some part of him already knew, even before reading. He picked up the note. It was short, but it sliced deeper than any scream ever could. "I can't do this anymore. I didn't sign up for this kind of life. I'm not ready to be a mother to twins. I need my freedom. I hope one day you understand." Rose. He froze. The world around him moved, but he didn't. His eyes traced the words again and again, refusing to believe them, hoping, just hoping, that somehow he read them wrong. But the words didn't change. She was gone. Gone like the breeze that crept in under their door every night. Gone like the scent of hibiscus in her hair after every shower. Gone like the quiet joy that once glowed behind her smile. And all she left behind were two tiny hearts, still dreaming, still breathing, still believing she would be there when they opened their eyes. But she wouldn't be. She had made her choice. And he was left behind, in the ruins. Time blurred. Seconds or hours, he couldn't tell. He just stood there, until the babies cried. Ada's cry pierced the silence, sharp, urgent. Toby's was softer, almost like an apology for needing him. He moved like a ghost, lifted them both into his arms, one on each side. They quieted the moment they touched him. Their small fingers clutched his shirt like they could sense something had shifted, like they knew the air had changed forever. He rocked them gently, back and forth, and as he rocked them, he broke, not with screams, not with rage, but quietly. Tears slipped down his face, hot, endless, soaking into their soft baby hair. He didn't cry because Rose had left him. He cried because he didn't know how to tell two innocent souls that the woman who carried them inside her for 9 long months didn't want them. The days that followed moved like molasses, slow, heavy, unforgiving. Time didn't pass. It dragged, like wet clothes strung beneath a sun that refused to shine. The kind of days where each second felt like a burden. Ada and Toby were barely 6 months old, too young to understand. But babies, they feel, they sense when a scent disappears, when a familiar touch vanishes, when the voice that once wrapped them in comfort is suddenly gone. Ada stopped smiling. Toby started waking at night, wide-eyed, scanning the shadows, his gaze whispering the question he couldn't ask. "Where's Mama?" Their father had no answers. Some nights, he sat beside the window, rocking them gently in his arms, whispering lullabies. His voice trembled, not from tiredness, but from grief. Now and then, he'd hear a footstep outside. He'd rush to the door, heart pounding, eyes desperate. Maybe she came back, but it was always the wind. Whispers began to ripple through the town. "Have you heard? She vanished, just left him. Twins? For one man? That's too much. No man raises babies alone. He'll give them away. They weren't trying to be cruel. They were speaking what the town believed. Where they lived, a man raising children alone was unheard of. If a woman left, the children were passed to relatives, orphanages, or lost in systems that swallowed them whole. But not his children. Not Ada. Not Toby. His job at the woodshop didn't last long. Late arrivals, missed days, sleepless nights. He had to let it go. His children came first. So he turned to the only skill left in his bones, push. He found an old wooden cart, started selling cassava on the roadside. It wasn't proud work. It wasn't profitable. But it bought powdered milk. It bought soap. It bought second-hand diapers, washed and reused more times than he'd ever dare admit. Each morning, he strapped Ada to his back, cradled Toby in front, balanced a basket on his head, and carried what was left of his pride in his throat. They became a common sight. Familiar, almost invisible. People stared. Some pitied. Some whispered, "Where's their mother?" "She died," he'd say sometimes, because death was easier than the shame of abandonment. But one thing he never did. He never begged. He would sell. He would work. He would sweat. But he would not lower his head, because he knew if he ever lowered it, he might never raise it again. Then came that day. The heat was unbearable, the kind that warps the air, blurs the roads, makes the earth ripple like it's burning from beneath. He had barely made a sail, his lips cracked, his stomach empty. The twins were restless, hungry, crying. He sat by the roadside, head buried in his hands. That day, for the first time, he thought about quitting, not giving them away. No, never that. But maybe, just maybe, he wasn't enough. Maybe someone else could do better. And as that thought crept in like a shadow, Toby, barely able to crawl, inched toward him, tiny hands unsteady, and then he reached up and placed one small hand on his father's face. Just a touch, soft, innocent, but it was enough. That little gesture pulled him back from the edge. He picked Toby up. Then Ada. He stood, and he kept going. Time moved forward, too fast. The twins grew like wildflowers, quick, brilliant, untamed. Ada spoke first, her first word. Not Dada, not Papa. But why? She asked it endlessly. Why no mummy? Why no light? Why we eat rice every day? And he always answered. Not always the truth, but always wrapped in hope. Toby was quieter. He didn't ask. He watched. He listened. At age 3, he fixed a broken fan. At 4, he built a toy car from scrap wire and bottle caps that actually moved. They were opposites, but they were connected. Two halves of a rare brilliance. By 7, they were outgrowing the town's mind. People often believed that the greatest pain came from someone leaving, but sometimes the deeper pain came when that someone returned. Yet, before her return, before regret found its way to her door, the universe had already begun to test the little family once again. It began with whispers, not the kind carried by curious neighbors. No, these whispers were colder, darker, the sort that slid beneath one's skin and gripped the spine with invisible fingers. They came from men in tailored suits, strangers who didn't belong in their dusty little town. The first time the twins were noticed was the day they entered the local science fair. Jide, their father, almost didn't let them attend. The registration fee alone was too much. In the end, he sold his old wristwatch, an heirloom from his own father, to pay it. But one look into Ada and Toby's eager eyes reminded him some sacrifices were simply meant to be made. The school auditorium buzzed with energy. Children from private schools stood proudly behind glossy banners, wearing polished shoes and typing on shiny laptops. Ada and Toby arrived quietly, with nothing more than their wire scraps, cardboard diagrams, and a buzzing homemade power box. But when the twins began to speak, the room changed. Ada's voice carried authority far beyond her years, as if she were born to command attention. Beside her, Toby adjusted wires and flipped switches with precision, responding to questions like a miniature scientist. By the end of their presentation, the applause was thunderous. Even the judges stood to clap. But it wasn't the claps that worried Jide. It was the eyes. Two men seated in the back row had not clapped. Their arms were crossed, their expressions unreadable. They weren't watching with admiration, but with calculation, measuring, analyzing, not for praise, but for potential. Jide had lived long enough to recognize the look. Not all attention was a blessing. Weeks passed. Life continued with its usual rhythm, until the evening Jide returned home and found a letter resting silently on the doorstep. No name, no address. Just a single word scrawled across the front in bold black ink. Opportunity. Inside was a card. We represent Titan Horizon Tech, an elite innovation program for young talents. We have reviewed Ada and Toby's science fair project. We believe they belong in our mentorship system. Enclosed is an invitation. It was the kind of message that could change lives. Jide held the card like it might bite. He didn't know who these people were or what they truly wanted. All he knew was that the world had found his children, and it hadn't asked for his permission. Ada was electric with excitement. Toby, quietly intrigued. Jide, he was afraid. Was he holding them back by shielding them? Or shielding them from something dangerous by hesitating? That night, as the oil lamp flickered and his hands shook, he sat with their baby photo in one hand and the invitation card in the other. The tears came again, silent, tired, heavy. Not because he was weak, but because when a man has spent his whole life protecting his children from wolves, it's difficult to recognize when one of those wolves is simply wearing a better coat. They went. Together, they boarded a bus to the city, Jide's first time in years. The noise hit first, then the blinding lights, and then the towering walls. Titan Horizon's headquarters rose like a gleaming blade into the sky, sharp, cold, proud. The first person they met wasn't her. Not yet. It was a different woman. Ms. Linda. She appeared in a crisp blue suit, glasses perched perfectly, and a smile so polished it felt rehearsed. She approached like she already knew them. "You must be Mr. Jide," she said, "and these are Ada and Toby. We've been expecting you." Her voice sounded like a signed contract. The twins were ushered into a test room. Jide was not allowed in. He waited outside, knee bouncing, heart pounding, time crawling. He expected alarms, screams, something, anything. But all that came was silence. Hours passed. Eventually the twins returned, smiling, beaming, voices full of wonder. "They want us," Ada whispered. "They said we're the youngest to ever pass." "They're giving us a real lab," Toby added. And just like that, the spark that lived inside them had found its fire. But fire wasn't only warmth. It also burned. The next 2 years became a double life. At home, Ada and Toby were the barefoot helpers who sold cassava, fixed broken fans, and hugged their father before bed. In the city, they were prodigies, nurtured by corporate mentors, whispered about in boardrooms, prepared for greatness. Jide understood less and less of what they said. He didn't mind. He was proud. But the pride came with fear, not of his children, but of what success might awaken. And just as their light grew brighter, shadows began to stir. One of those shadows was Rose. Yes, her name started to echo again. Jide heard it first through town gossip, then from a whispered conversation while selling yams near the city's transport park. "I heard she's back," someone murmured. "You remember Rose? The pretty one who left her twins? She's in the city now, looking for someone." Jide's heart clenched. His breath caught. The past was circling back, and this time, it wasn't knocking. It was already at the door. At first, Jide tried to convince himself he had misheard. People talked. Names floated in and out of conversations like wind through rusted windows. Maybe it was another Rose. Maybe it was just gossip with no spine. But something inside him, deep, primal, tightened. A warning not taught, but earned. One that grew inside bones scraped by life's cruelty. A signal only the broken truly understood. And that feeling only grew stronger. That night, sleep did not come. The lamp flickered on the wall, casting tall shadows that danced like silent ghosts. Jide sat hunched on his wooden stool, hands buried between his knees, eyes fixed on the cracked floor, waiting. Not for something, not for nothing, for everything. His thoughts screamed in the silence. What does she want? After all these years? Why now? What right does she have? There were no answers, but the voice in his chest, the one that had saved him before, whispered again. She wasn't just passing through. Days passed. He said nothing to Ada or Toby. They were preparing for the most important event of their young lives, a national tech exhibition. Titan Horizon had handpicked them to represent the future. Government officials would attend, corporate giants, even foreign investors. Ada was finalizing a drone that purified contaminated water. Toby was designing a solar generator that fit inside a backpack. They were becoming unstoppable, and Jide couldn't bear to stain that moment with the stench of the past. But fate doesn't ask for your permission. One hot afternoon, arms full of market bags, he was passing the corner bakery when he saw her. She was across the road, leaning casually beside a black car with tinted windows, sunglasses, heels, braided hair twisted into a bun, leather bag clutched like she had something important inside it, or someone waiting for her. Their eyes met. Time didn't slow. It stopped. His breath caught, his feet locked. Only his heartbeat moved, pounding like war drums in his chest. She blinked, lifted her sunglasses, and then it hit him. Recognition, then shock, then shame. She stepped forward. "Jide?" He didn't answer. Her voice hadn't changed, still soft, still careful, like every word cost something. She took another step. "I heard about the twins." Still silence. And that silence, thicker than pain, heavier than rage, said more than any words ever could. He turned and walked away. He didn't want her tears. He didn't want her apology. He didn't want her back. But somewhere inside, he knew this wasn't the end. People like Rose never return empty-handed. They come back with a story, with an angle, with a plan. And he was right. The next day, Ada and Toby returned from the city. Unexpectedly, their eyes didn't shine. Ada stood by the doorway, her hands balled into fists. Toby said nothing, his face unreadable, distant. Jide knew before they spoke. Something had changed. Then Ada, her voice tight but steady, asked the question he feared most. "Dad, do you know a woman named Rose?" Hearing that name on his daughter's lips was like reopening a wound that never fully healed. He lowered his gaze. "Yes," he said. Toby stepped forward. "She came to our training center today, said she was our mother." And just like that, the storm had arrived. No walls left to hide behind. No lies left to protect them, only the truth. He sat them down, and for the first time in over 20 years, he told them everything. The early love, the pregnancy, the fights, the night she vanished, the note she left behind, the long silence that followed. He didn't cry, not because he wasn't broken, but because in that moment, he had to be their anchor. He had to be the man who had held their world together, even when his own world had fallen apart. When he finished, the twins said nothing. Toby rose and walked outside. Ada stayed, still, silent. After what felt like eternity, she whispered, "She wants to meet us again." Jade's heart dropped. She says she's sorry, that she made a mistake, that she's changed. He looked into Ada's eyes that once mirrored roses, but these eyes were sharper now, steeled by truth. "Do you believe her?" he asked. Ada hesitated. "I don't know." Those 3 words hurt more than any silence ever could, because now the past wasn't just haunting him, it was haunting them too. That night, Jide stood outside under the pale moon, eyes lost in the stars. The air was still, too still, as if even the universe had paused to listen. He closed his eyes, listened to the crickets, and made a vow in the silence. She could return. She could cry. She could knock on every door she wanted. But one thing was certain. She would never, ever take them away from him. Not after everything. Not now. Not ever. The morning arrived like a question that didn't want an answer. That kind of morning where the air is too still, where even the sun seems hesitant to rise. A morning that doesn't knock. It waits, heavy and patient, for you to open your eyes and face what you didn't ask for. Jide woke, but didn't move. He didn't need to. He already knew. She was waiting. In the kitchen, the kettle hissed. Ada's voice, low and careful, drifted in from the next room. She was talking to Toby. Hushed words, sharp edges, too soft for eavesdropping, too loud to ignore. He didn't need to hear the words. He knew the subject, Rose. They had questions now. They were no longer children protected by a father's silence, no longer tucked safely behind the walls he had built with pain and love. They were adults now, bright, strong, uncontainable, and they were standing outside the walls now, where things could hurt them. Jide sat quietly outside, hands cupped around a warm tea mug, watching the sky shift its colors. He heard footsteps. Toby joined him, slow and silent, and sat down beside him. For a while, neither spoke. The breeze rustled through the mango tree above them. Generators hummed in the distance. Somewhere, a goat bleated. The world was still moving, even as something inside Jide felt frozen. Finally, Toby broke the silence. "She says she wants to come here." Jide turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "She says she doesn't want anything, just to talk." There it was, the first layer of the trap. Jide didn't respond. He watched his son instead, watched the way Toby's fingers tapped against his thigh, like he was solving a riddle no one had given him the full pieces for. Then came the question, a quiet one. Would you let her come? Not an attack, a test, not just of permission, but of pain. Jide didn't know what to say. Yes felt like betrayal. No felt like control. And so he told the truth. "I can't stop you from meeting her," he said quietly, "but I can't protect you from what you'll find." She came that afternoon, not with humility, not with apology in her step, but in a black SUV with tinted windows, tires still carrying the dust of city roads. She stepped out like she had been here just yesterday, like time had waited for her. But the village had not. The dust clung to her shoes. The perfume in the air didn't belong here anymore. The years she missed weren't forgiving her. The twins stood at the front door. Jide remained seated, watching. He would not rise. He would not meet her halfway. Let her walk the full distance of every single day she abandoned. She looked around. The old bench, the cracked wall, the broken flower pot Ada had painted with her small fingers at 5. Her face softened, but the memories weren't hers anymore. Finally, she spoke. "Hi. Ada, Toby." Silence. She hesitated, breath shaky. "I've thought about this moment for years. I've played it over and over in my head. What I'd say, how I'd say it. But now that I'm here," she faltered, "I don't know how to start." Ada stepped forward. Her voice didn't shake. "Start with why." Rose blinked. "Why did you leave? Why did you never come back? Why now?" Each question hit her like a slap. She stumbled through her answers. "I was afraid." Jide's eyes narrowed. "I was young. Overwhelmed." He almost laughed. "I didn't know how to be a mother. You were until the day you weren't. I thought leaving was better than staying and failing you. You didn't fail because you stayed. You failed because you left." The silence that followed could choke a room. Even the birds stopped chirping. The wind stood still. Then she said the words that made Jide's jaw clench. "I want to make things right." He stood, slow, measured, no anger on his face, just clarity. He walked forward step by step, not to argue, but to make something final. "You want to make things right?" he asked. She nodded almost eagerly, then turn around. Her eyes widened. "What?" "Turn around. Get back in that car, drive away, and don't come back." "Jide, please." "No," he cut her off. Calm, sharp. "Please is for people who stayed, for people who scraped coins to feed children, for people who watched over sick bodies all night and went to work the next morning. Please is not for you." Her lips trembled. "They're my children too," she whispered. "Were," he corrected. "They were your children." Ada flinched. Toby turned slightly away, but Jide wasn't finished. "You had your chance. You made your choice. You walked away. You didn't ask who would teach them to walk, or who'd sit beside them when they were bullied, or who'd make them laugh when they were heartbroken." He stepped closer. "You didn't just leave. You disappeared." Tears filled her eyes, but it was too late. Too late for crying. Too late for memory. Too late for motherhood. She turned to the twins. "I know you may never forgive me, but I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you." Ada looked at the ground. Toby looked through her. Not one word from their lips. She waited. No response. Then, quietly, she turned, and for the second time in her life, Rose walked away. But this time, no one cried, because this time, there was no broken family left behind, only a whole one. Without her, for a few days, it seemed like peace had come back. But peace is weak, especially when the past leaves marks behind. After Rose left the compound, things did not go back to normal. They just stopped, like everyone was holding their breath. Toby grew more distant, not unkind, just silent. He lost himself in his work, in circuit boards and blueprints, things even Jide did not try to understand anymore. Ada, however, could not sit still. She came home later, stayed longer at Titan Horizon, answered questions with only a few words. Sometimes Jide caught her staring at her phone, as if waiting for a call or a message from someone. He did not ask, but he noticed. Because sometimes the real danger is not the person who comes back, but the emptiness they leave behind. Then it happened. It started small, an email from Titan Horizons board. They wanted a media rebranding, a story about people. They said it would make the company look good, remind the public of its humble beginnings. And the headline they suggested? Abandoned at birth, billionaire twins reunite with long-lost mother in touching family reunion. Jide almost choked. Touching? Reunion? They made it sound like she had lost a pair of shoes, not two children. The next day, he went straight to the city office. He hadn't worn his good shirt in months, but that day he put it on, polished his old shoes, and walked into the glass building like he belonged there. They were not expecting him. But he did not care. He demanded a meeting. They made him wait 2 hours. He did not move. He sat in the lobby, surrounded by shiny chairs and cold air, staring at his own reflection in the floor. Finally, a man in a suit came. "Mr. Jide, I'm Daniel, VP of Public Relations." His handshake was weak, too weak. They sat. Daniel smiled. Jide did not. "Mr. Jide," Daniel said, "we admire your children. Their story could inspire millions, but every great story needs heart, a reunion, a second chance. People love that." Jide stared. "You want to use their pain for attention." Daniel laughed nervously. "No, for connection, to make them relatable, to give people someone to cheer for." Jide leaned forward. "They already have someone to cheer for, each other, and me." Daniel cleared his throat. "Well, Rose signed a waiver. She agreed to interviews. We hoped your children would too." That was when Jide understood. Rose was not here for family. She was here for fame. She saw what they had built, the money, the name, the power, and she wanted a piece, not of love, not of forgiveness, but of their success, and she was ready to lie to get it. Jide came home angry, not just angry, burning. Ada was in her room. Toby was fixing wires on the porch. He called them inside. "What is this?" he asked, throwing the printed email on the table. Ada tensed. Toby just looked. "She reached out," Ada said. "She said the story would help the company, that it was just for show." Jide stepped closer. "She lied. She's using you. Do you think she cares about the company? She left you." Ada stood firm. "People can change, Dad." Jide's heart hurt. Toby spoke, calm as always. "We didn't agree to anything. We just listened." Jide looked at them, the children he raised with hard work and sleepless nights, and for the first time he felt something between them. A wall, unseen, quiet, but there, not because they did not trust him, but because they wanted to believe in something that was not real. That night, Jide could not sleep. The wind screamed outside, throwing sand at the window like tiny punches. What if Rose gets what she wants? What if they believe her? What if the world forgets everything he did, everything he gave, just because her story sells better? He had survived hunger, shame, being alone. But this was different. This was a fight. And it was not fought with fists. It was fought with lies. Jide stared at the ceiling, his chest heavy. 3 days after the meeting, Jide sat in the backyard, staring at the mango tree he had planted when Ada and Toby were born. The tree wasn't tall. A storm had bent it years ago. Its bark was rough, its branches uneven, but it still stood. That tree was like his story, like their story. Bent, yes, but never broken. He reached into the drawer beside his bed and pulled out a small rusted tin. Inside were pieces of the past he had kept, but never showed anyone. The torn note Rose left behind. Receipts from loans he paid alone. the hospital bill from when Toby had typhoid at 6, and Jide slept on the floor because he couldn't afford a bed for himself. Each piece was a truth the world didn't know, a truth Rose didn't want them to see. He held the note again. I didn't sign up for this kind of life. Jide closed his eyes and whispered, You don't get to change the story now. That evening, he made his move. He wrote his own letter, short, strong, and honest. He added proof, dates, photos, videos, witness statements. He sent it to Titan Horizon's full board, not just the PR team. Then he sent another copy to a journalist he knew, a man who had once bought yam from him years ago when his car broke down near the village. That journalist owed him a favor. Jide called it in, and when the man heard the real story, he didn't hesitate. Give me 48 hours, he said. Meanwhile, at Titan Horizon, the lies were already spreading. Rose had returned like she belonged there. She had set up a soft interview with a media group, not a big event, just a casual talk about her journey. Lies. She was changing history with every word. Later, Jide saw the leaked video. Rose sat on a white couch, legs crossed, smiling just right. Her voice was soft, shaky enough to sound real. It was the hardest thing I ever did, but I knew leaving would give them a better life. I watched from afar. I never stopped loving them. Watched from afar, never stopped loving. She hadn't called, not once. No birthdays, no visits, nothing. But the camera believed her, because pain, when wrapped in pretty words, sells better than truth in old clothes. But she made one mistake. She forgot that silence doesn't last forever. 2 days after the video leaked, Jide's letter exploded online. The journalist had published it under a headline that spread like fire. The man who raised billionaires. The story their mother doesn't want you to know. Within hours, the world saw everything. Photos of Jide carrying the twins in the market. A clip of Ada and Toby at 8, showing their first invention at a small science fair. Rose's note, raw and unedited, next to Jide's hospital bills, school letters, and job offers. He turned down to raise them. No drama, just facts. And the world listened. People reacted fast. We don't want the mother's fake redemption. We want the father's crown. He didn't just raise billionaires. He raised legends. Cancel the PR lie. Respect Jide. This man deserves a statue. Then came the final blow. Titan Horizon released a statement. Effective immediately, all marketing about Ada and Toby Jide will reflect the true history of their upbringing. We regret any misrepresentation. They cut ties with Rose. Quietly. No announcement. No goodbye. She was removed from the PR list, erased from photos, banned from the building. The irony? 20 years ago, she walked out without a word. Now, the world walked out on her, with millions watching. But even in victory, Jide didn't feel like celebrating. This wasn't about revenge. It was about the truth. Not for himself, for Ada, for Toby, for every father who ever stood firm when the world pushed back. That night, as he sat in the quiet house, a soft knock came at the door. He opened it. There stood Rose. No fancy car, no high heels, no makeup. Just her, small, tired, real. She looked at him and said, I see now. I really do. Jide nodded, but said nothing. And for the first time, she turned and walked away before he had to ask. Days passed. The news stories disappeared. The world forgot. But their family didn't. Because sometimes the quietest moments after a storm are the loudest inside a home. Ada and Toby kept working, their schedules full, their inventions praised, their company now backed by big investors. But behind every success was a small, invisible crack. They weren't running from Rose anymore, but they were still running from something. One morning, Ada asked Jide a question he wasn't ready for. Did she ever love us? He was peeling yams. The knife slipped, cutting his finger, but he didn't feel it. Her words hurt more. He looked up. For once, he didn't have the perfect answer. What is love? Is it just giving birth or staying? Is it blood? Or is it wiping a child's fever at 2 a.m. with no money, no help, and no sleep? He set the knife down. She loved you the way she knew how. But I loved you the way you needed. Ada didn't speak. But her eyes filled with tears. She left the kitchen quietly, and Jide knew the healing had finally begun. Toby's response came days later. He didn't talk. He built. For hours he stayed in his workshop. Wires, screws, burnt circuits everywhere. A mess of grief turned into motion. Jide didn't interrupt, until one night he heard a soft hum. He walked in. On the table sat a small device, sleek, glowing. "What is that?" Jide asked. Toby didn't look up. A recorder, but smarter. It doesn't just save sounds, it saves moments, where you were, how you felt. It remembers the truth. Jide frowned. Why? Toby finally met his eyes. So no one can rewrite history again. Ada and Toby disappeared from the public eye the next month. Not physically, but in every way that mattered. They stopped giving interviews, skipped red carpets, focused only on their work. Then, they shocked everyone. They launched the Jide Foundation, a global program to help single fathers raising children alone. At the press conference, broadcast live, Ada stood in front of thousands and said, "We weren't abandoned. We were chosen by a man who could have left, but didn't, who could have broken, but stood stronger. This isn't just our story. It's his. And this is our thank you." Toby added, "To every father raising his kids without praise, we see you. We are you." Then they revealed a statue, a life-sized bronze of a father, holding a child on each shoulder. Not grand, not flashy, just real. Under it, carved in stone, "He carried us when we couldn't walk, so we could one day run for the world." Jide didn't cry that day. He couldn't. His heart was too full, not from pride, not from recognition, but from something deeper, peace, because for the first time in years, he felt seen, not by the world, but by them, and that was all he ever needed. As the sun set, the cameras left, and the crowd faded. Jide sat with Ada and Toby. They didn't speak. They just watched the statue glow in the evening light. Then Ada rested her head on his shoulder, and Toby placed his hand on Jide's knee. Without a single word, they both said, "Thank you, Papa," and Jide whispered, not to them, not to the world, but to himself. It was worth it. Rose didn't sleep the night her plan fell apart. She sat in her small apartment in the city, staring at her phone. Her hands were shaking. The lights were off. Only the blue glow from the screen lit her face. Everywhere she looked, there was one name. Jide, the man she left behind. The man the world now called the father of legends. She scrolled through comments she didn't want to read. "You had gold in your arms, and you threw it away. He didn't just raise kids, he raised history. You don't deserve to say their names." Each word cut deeper than the last. Rose had thought this would be easy. She'd step back into their lives, appear on TV, smile, say a few tearful words, and just like that, people would forgive. But it didn't go that way, because the truth always walks slower than lies. But it arrives, and now the truth had found her. Somewhere far from that dark apartment, Jide sat outside his home under the moonlight. He didn't smile, he didn't cry, He just sat, still. Inside the house, Ada and Toby were asleep, safe, free. He had finally closed the door on a chapter that nearly broke him, or so he thought. The next day, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived. No return address. Just a single word on the envelope, handwritten in sharp, nervous strokes. For Jide. He opened it slowly. Inside was a second note, a much older one, different handwriting, rushed, smudged, torn at the corner, and a single line stood out. Tell the twins the truth, before I can't. Jide frowned. His eyes scanned the back of the paper. Another note, this one newer, written by Rose. I never told you everything. I didn't leave just because of fear. There was something else. Someone else. I think it's time you knew. Jide sat down. His hands trembled. What was she trying to say? He turned the paper again. There was a photo tucked behind the letter. Old, blurry, torn. It showed Rose standing beside a man Jide had never seen before, but in the background, there was a hospital signboard, Kings County General Hospital, maternity wing. The photo was dated 2 days before she left. 2 days, and Jide's heart stopped. Could it be? No, it wasn't possible, was it? That evening, Jide didn't sleep. He barely blinked. He remembered everything, every moment, every word Rose ever said. And something clicked. A day before she vanished, she had argued with him more than usual. She had shouted, "You don't know what I'm carrying." He thought she meant pressure, stress. But what if she meant something else? What if she was hiding something? Someone. At sunrise, Jide made a choice. He called someone he never thought he'd need again, his cousin Daniel, who worked at the city hospital. He sent the photo. He asked one question. Who is this man with Rose? Hours passed. Daniel replied, That man? That's Dr. Keene. He was head of maternity here years ago, but he died last year. Why are you asking about him? And just like that, more silence, more mystery. Jide felt the ground shifting beneath his feet again. He wasn't sure what scared him more, that Rose had come back, or that she had never truly left. Jide didn't waste time. He didn't call first. He didn't write. He went straight to her. He knew where she stayed now. A small flat near the edge of the city. Quiet. Hidden. Like she didn't want to be found. But she had already been found. Now it was time for answers. He knocked once. The door opened halfway. Rose stood there, her eyes wide. She looked tired, more tired than before. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her hair was loose. She didn't speak. Jide lifted the photo in his hand. Who is he? She froze. Where did you get that? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. From you, he said. You sent the letter. Her hands trembled. I didn't mean for you to see it like this. You should have shown me 20 years ago, Jide said, stepping inside without asking. The apartment was quiet. No one else was there. A single chair, a fan, a cup of untouched tea. I want the truth, he said. Now. Rose sat down slowly. Her hands held the sides of the chair, like her legs couldn't carry the weight of what she was about to say. She looked up at him, her lips parted, and the words came out slowly. Before I left, I went to the hospital. I wasn't feeling well. I thought something was wrong with the babies. Jide said nothing. I met Dr. Keene. He ran a few tests. Then he told me something I didn't know how to face. She took a deep breath. There was a third child. The room fell into silence. Jide's heart stopped. He blinked. What did you say? There was a third baby, she said, her voice shaking. A second boy. He didn't cry right away. They said he was very weak, that he might not survive. Jide staggered back. "You never told me." "I couldn't," she whispered. "I didn't know what to do. They said I had to choose. The hospital said we couldn't afford the special care he needed. You had just lost your job. We were already struggling." Her voice cracked. "I panicked. I told them to give him up. A family in the city was ready to take a newborn. Quietly. No paperwork. No questions." Jide sat down slowly, the air heavy around him. "You gave away my son," he said, staring at her. "I didn't know if he'd live," she cried. "I told myself it was mercy, that you'd never have to carry that pain. I tried to forget, but I couldn't." Tears ran down her cheeks. "I wrote the letter last week because I saw him online." Jide's head snapped up. "What?" "He's alive," she said. "He's not a child anymore. He's a man now. He looks just like you. Same eyes, same face." She reached into her drawer and handed Jide a phone. One photo was on the screen. A young man, maybe 22, tall, deep brown skin, bright eyes, wearing a lab coat, smiling. Jide's throat tightened. "What's his name?" he whispered. "Daniel." Suddenly, it all made sense. The way Ada always said she felt something missing. The way Toby once drew a picture of 3 kids standing under the mango tree. The strange dreams. The unexplained connection they both said they felt, like a shadow following them. It wasn't just imagination, it was memory. The memory of someone who was always meant to be with them. Jide stood slowly. "I want to meet him." Rose wiped her tears. "He doesn't know about us, about you, about his brother and sister. Then it's time he did." That night, Jide sat alone in the dark, holding the photo in his hand. His fingers brushed the face of a son he never held, a boy he never named, a man who was part of his blood, and yet a stranger. And he whispered 4 words into the night. "I'm coming for you."